In the vast tapestry of ancient history, where emperors and warriors often steal the limelight, there lies a hidden gem, a tale less told. Amidst the grandeur of empires and the clamor of epic battles, the story of King Ashurbanipal beckons. A monarch whose reign was overshadowed by giants, yet whose legacy is a testament to resilience and ambition. Are you ready to journey through the sands of time, to uncover the secrets, intrigues, and tales of a king who defied the odds? Join us as we delve deep into the annals of history, bringing to life the enigmatic story of King Ashurbanipal. In the late 7th century BC, around 685 BC, Ashurbanipal rose to power, succeeding his father, Esarhaddon. While Ashurbanipal's records paint a picture of divine destiny, his rise to the throne was anything but simple, setting the stage for future conflicts. Interestingly, Ashurbanipal wasn't Esarhaddon's first choice. He had older brothers, including Nineveh, the original crown prince, as well as Shamash-Shum-Ukin and Shamash-Metayubalit. He even had an elder sister, Sarow-Ederet. The royal corridors of Assyria were rife with tension when Nineveh unexpectedly passed away in 674 BC. To understand the gravity of this, one must look back. Esarhaddon wasn't his father Sennacherib's first choice either. After being overlooked, Esarhaddon's elder brother, Artamilisu, assassinated their father, leading to a civil war which Esarhaddon eventually won. Now, with his own heir gone, Esarhaddon had to rethink the line of succession. His decision? He named Ashurbanipal, his younger son, as the emperor of Assyria, while his eldest surviving son, Shamash-Shum-Ukin, was made the king of Babylon and southern Mesopotamia. They were to rule as equals. The third son, Shamash-Metayubalit, older than Ashurbanipal, was overlooked, possibly due to health issues. Historians often ponder why Esarhaddon chose this dual leadership, straying from the traditional unified Assyrian rule. Was it to prevent jealousy and potential rivalry between the brothers? Some believe that Ashurbanipal's mother was Assyrian, while Shamash-Shum-Ukin's was Babylonian, potentially making him less favorable for the Assyrian throne. Yet, there's also a possibility that they shared the same mother, perhaps Ashur-Hammit, Esarhaddon's main consort. In a grand ceremony in Nineveh, the Assyrian capital, in May 672 BC, both princes were presented to foreign dignitaries, Assyrian elites, and military leaders. It's believed that it was during this event that the name Ashurbanipal, which translates to Ashur is the creator of the air, was given to him, replacing his former unknown name. Around this period, Ashurbanipal also tied the knot with his queen-to-be, Lebali-Sharat. As Ashurbanipal stepped into the role of the crown prince, he was ushered into the house of succession, the palace designated for the heir apparent. Here, he was meticulously trained in the arts of leadership, from hunting and riding to the nuances of wisdom and scholarship. He also mastered military skills like archery and chariotry. With his father, Esarhaddon, frequently battling illness in his later years, the weight of the empire's administration increasingly rested on the shoulders of Ashurbanipal and his brother, Shamash-Shum-Ukin. Correspondences from this period reveal Ashurbanipal's role in overseeing the empire's intelligence, collecting crucial information from foreign lands and preparing detailed reports for his ailing father. By late 669 BC, following Esarhaddon's passing, Ashurbanipal ascended to the throne of Assyria, having been the crown prince for a mere 3 years. He now sat on what was arguably the most influential throne in the world at the time. Yet, his reign wasn't entirely unchallenged. His grandmother, Nakié, felt the need to draft the Zakuta Treaty, ensuring that the entire Assyrian realm, from the royal family to the aristocracy, pledged their loyalty to Ashurbanipal. Interestingly, there seemed to be minimal resistance to his rise. Meanwhile, Shamash-Shum-Ukin was crowned king of Babylon a bit later, in the following spring. This event was symbolized by Ashurbanipal's gesture of returning the revered statue of Marduk, which had been taken from Babylon 2 decades earlier by Sennacherib. For 16 years, Shamash-Shum-Ukin governed Babylon. While there weren't overt conflicts with Ashurbanipal, tensions simmered regarding the extent of his autonomy. Esarhaddon's decrees regarding succession were somewhat ambiguous about the power dynamics between the two brothers. While Ashurbanipal was the primary heir and Shamash-Shum-Ukin was expected to pledge loyalty to him, Ashurbanipal was instructed not to meddle in his brother's affairs. However, over time, Ashurbanipal tilted the scales of power towards himself, possibly out of concern that granting too much independence to his elder brother might jeopardize his own reign. In 671 BC, Ashurbanipal's father, Esarhaddon, achieved a monumental victory by conquering Egypt, marking the first time the land of the pharaohs fell under Assyrian dominion. This conquest expanded the Assyrian Empire to its zenith. However, their grip on Egypt was tenuous. The defeated Kushite pharaoh, Taharqa, retreated to Nubia but continued plotting to reclaim his kingdom. To solidify Assyrian control, Esarhaddon stationed troops in key Egyptian cities and entrusted local Egyptian nobles with governance, making them vassal rulers. But by 669 BC, Taharqa rallied Egypt against its Assyrian overlords. Esarhaddon mobilized to quash this rebellion, but fate intervened, and he died en route. Amidst the succession process in Nineveh, many Egyptian vassals seized the moment, joining the revolt and annihilating the Assyrian garrison in Memphis. Ashurbanipal, now the new king, responded swiftly, dispatching an army to quell the uprising. As this army journeyed to Egypt, they gathered tribute and reinforcements from Assyria's Levantine subjects, including King Manasseh of Judah and rulers from Cyprus. The Assyrians then clashed with the rebels at Karbanatu in Lower Egypt, emerging victorious. Taharqa and his allies fled from Memphis to Thebes and then to Nubia. Surprisingly, some captured conspirators, like the vassal ruler Necho-I, were taken to Assyria, made to pledge allegiance, and then allowed to return to their positions in Egypt. However, the drama in Egypt wasn't over. Upon Taharqa's death in 664 BC, his nephew Tantamani declared himself pharaoh, swiftly capturing Thebes and setting his sights on Memphis. Ashurbanipal responded by sending the Assyrian forces once more. Tantamani retreated southwards at the sight of the approaching army. In a show of strength and as punishment for the recurrent revolts, the Assyrians plundered Thebes, a significant blow to this ancient Egyptian city. Yet, thanks to the adept diplomacy of its governor, Menchemat, Thebes wasn't completely destroyed. Tantamani wasn't pursued further, and as the Assyrian army returned to Nineveh, they paraded the spoils from Thebes, repurposing many treasures and obelisks for Ashurbanipal's grand projects. In 665 BC, a surprising twist occurred. Ertak, the Elamite king who had maintained a peaceful stance with Esarhaddon, suddenly attacked Babylonia. Though he was repelled and retreated to Elam, he died soon after. His successor, Tumen, had no blood ties to Ertak and, to consolidate his rule, eliminated his political adversaries. However, 3 of Ertak's sons, potential claimants to the Elamite throne, sought refuge in Assyria. Ashurbanipal granted them asylum, even when Tumen demanded their return. Following this Elamite skirmish, Ashurbanipal faced internal challenges. Belekisha, leader of the Gambulians in Babylonia, instigated a rebellion. Accused of supporting the Elamite invasion, he faced Ashurbanipal's wrath. A preserved letter reveals Ashurbanipal instructing the governor of Uruk, Nabu-Usapsi, to confront Belekisha. This rebellion, however, was short-lived. In a twist of fate, Belekisha met his end at the tusks of a wild boar. His son, Dunanu, surrendered to Ashurbanipal soon after in 663 BC. Yet, peace was fleeting. In 653 BC, Tumen invaded Babylonia. With limited military resources, Shamash-Shum-Ukin couldn't fend off the Elamites and had to rely on Ashurbanipal's might. Ashurbanipal's forces swiftly secured the city of derivative Tumen, initially advancing, retreated to the Elamite capital, Susa. The climactic battle of Ulai near Susa saw a resounding Assyrian victory, with Tumen losing his life. Following this, Ashurbanipal placed 2 of Ertak's sons in power, weakening Elamite resistance and royal authority. Ashurbanipal's inscriptions vividly recount his triumph. "I swept over Elam entirely like a storm. I beheaded Tumen, their plotting king, and slew countless warriors. I captured many alive and filled the plains with their corpses. Their blood turned the Ulai River red." Dunanu, who had sided with the Elamites, was captured and executed. The Gambulians faced Ashurbanipal's fury, with their city, Shapabel, being inundated and many of its people killed. In Dunanu's place, Ashurbanipal appointed Ramutu as the new Gambulian leader, but only after he agreed to a hefty tribute. The Sumerians, wandering Indo-European tribes from the southern Caucasus, had once ventured into Assyria during the reign of Ashurbanipal's father, Esarhaddon. After facing defeat, they shifted their focus to Lydia in western Anatolia, under the rule of Gyges. In a twist of fate, Gyges claimed to have received guidance from the Assyrian god, Ashur, in a dream. This prompted him to seek Ashurbanipal's aid against the Sumerian threat. Interestingly, the Assyrians were unaware of Lydia's existence. But once diplomatic channels were established, the Sumerian invasion was thwarted around 665 BC. Ashurbanipal's forces captured 2 Sumerian leaders and seized significant spoils. The extent of Assyrian involvement remains unclear, but it seems Gyges felt let down. Just over a decade later, he abandoned his alliance with Ashurbanipal, choosing to side with Egypt. In response, Ashurbanipal cursed Gyges. When Lydia faced invasions around 652 to 650 BC, there was a palpable sense of schadenfreude in Assyria. Meanwhile, as Assyrian troops campaigned in Elam, a coalition of Persians, Cimmerians, and Medes advanced on Nineveh, even reaching its formidable walls. In defense, Ashurbanipal rallied his Scythian allies, repelling the invaders. It's believed that the Median king, Phraortes, perished in the conflict, though some argue he might not have been present, and his demise might relate to a later event. Following Gyges' death around 652 BC, his son Artas ascended the throne. With the Scythians pushing the Cimmerians out of their territories, the Cimmerians once again set their sights on Lydia, capturing significant portions. Like his father, Artas sought Ashurbanipal's assistance, pleading, "You cursed my father," leading to his misfortune, "Bless me, your loyal servant, and I'll serve under you." The outcome of this plea is uncertain, but Lydia eventually managed to shake off the Cimmerian yoke. It wasn't until Artas's grandson, Aliats, took the reins that the Cimmerians were fully expelled from Lydia. Esarhaddon's records hinted that Shamash-Shum-Ukin should have been granted full reign over Babylonia. However, contemporary documents suggest he only truly governed Babylon and its immediate surroundings. Interestingly, several Babylonian cities, like Nippur, Uruk, and Ur, as well as rulers in the Sea Land, recognized Ashurbanipal as their sovereign, bypassing Shamash-Shum-Ukin. Initially, Shamash-Shum-Ukin held his brother in high regard, addressing him as "my brother" in letters, a stark contrast to the formal "the king, my father" he used for Esarhaddon. While many letters from Shamash-Shum-Ukin to Ashurbanipal have been preserved, there is no record of any replies. Perhaps Ashurbanipal, with his extensive intelligence network, felt no need to correspond. By the 650s, the relationship soured. Frustrated by Ashurbanipal's increasing interference in Babylonian matters and his own diminishing stature, Shamash-Shum-Ukin plotted rebellion. A letter from Zakir, a courtier, to Ashurbanipal reveals an instance where visitors from the Sea Land openly criticized Ashurbanipal in Shamash-Shum-Ukin's presence. Though angered, Shamash-Shum-Ukin refrained from punishing them. In 652 BC, Shamash-Shum-Ukin's aspirations for an independent Babylonia culminated in a revolt. Legends suggest their sister, Saru-Ederet, tried to mediate, but to no avail. The ensuing civil war spanned 3 years. Bolstered by the promise of southern support, which historically resented Assyrian dominance, and the backing of ever-opportunistic Elamites, Shamash-Shum-Ukin rallied the masses. Ashurbanipal's inscriptions capture the essence of the betrayal. During these times, Shamash-Shum-Ukin, my unfaithful brother, whom I had showered with kingly gifts and privileges, turned against me. He deceived the loyal Babylonians with lies. Ashurbanipal's records reveal that Shamash-Shum-Ukin garnered extensive support, notably from the Chaldeans, Arameans, Elamites, and possibly the Medes. The war was tumultuous, with shifting allegiances making it a complex web of deceit. Notably, Nabu-bel-Shumidi, a southern Babylonian governor, became infamous for his repeated betrayals, much to Ashurbanipal's fury. In the face of a formidable coalition of adversaries, Shamash-Shum-Ukin couldn't withstand Ashurbanipal's relentless onslaught. As battles raged on, his allies dwindled, territories were lost, and by 650 BC, key cities like Sippar, Borsippa, Kutha, and even Babylon were under siege. The blockade of Babylon was particularly harrowing, with famine driving its residents to such desperation that some, as Ashurbanipal's records claim, resorted to cannibalism. After enduring 2 years of hunger, disease, and warfare, Babylon capitulated in 648 BC. Ashurbanipal's retribution was fierce. He recounts feeding the carved-up bodies of the defeated to animals. Amidst this chaos, a massive fire consumed parts of Babylon. The fate of Shamash-Shum-Ukin remains shrouded in mystery. While some believe he took his own life in the flames, others speculate he might have been executed or met a different tragic end. Post this tumultuous victory, Ashurbanipal installed Kandalanu as Babylon's puppet king. His reign, largely overshadowed by Ashurbanipal's authority, remains enigmatic. Some suggest Kandalanu might have been another of Ashurbanipal's siblings, or perhaps a loyalist rewarded for siding with the Assyrian king during the civil strife. Regardless, real power remained firmly with Ashurbanipal. The civil war's aftermath was profound. While it marked a significant victory for Ashurbanipal, the conflict drained Assyria's resources and weakened its grip on its territories. The empire, already showing signs of waning power, saw its influence further diminish post the war. Ashurbanipal's brutal sacking of Babylon, the second in just 3 decades, intensified the resentment in southern Babylonia. This discontent would later fuel the uprising led by Nabopolassar after Ashurbanipal's demise, culminating in the rise of the Neo-Babylonian Empire and the eventual downfall of Assyria. Elam's involvement in supporting Shamash-Shum-Ukin during the civil war led to its own set of challenges. After an early defeat near Dir, Elam's king, Amenagash, was overthrown by Tamaritu II. However, Tamaritu's reign was short-lived, and after a series of battles and political upheavals, Ashurnasirpal III ascended to the throne. Despite his position, he faced challenges from within, particularly from the rebel Nabu-bel-Shumidi, who had a significant following in Elam. Ashurbanipal, still holding a grudge against Elam for its support of his enemies, invaded the region in 647 BC. Ashurnasirpal, unable to mount a defense, fled his capital, leaving it vulnerable to Assyrian plunder. The Assyrians didn't stop at Madaktu, they ravaged city after city, leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. Even Parsua, a potential precursor to the later Achaemenid Empire, was forced to pay tribute to Ashurbanipal. The climax of this campaign was the brutal sacking of Susa. Ashurbanipal's records vividly detail the desecration of royal tombs, the looting of temples, and the theft of sacred statues. Susa was virtually erased, and the devastation extended throughout Elam. The scale and ferocity of the campaign were so intense that some historians label it as a form of genocide. The intent was clear: to obliterate Elamite culture and send a chilling message to the world. Yet, Elam persisted. Ashurbanipal chose not to annex the region, allowing Ashurnasirpal to return to power. However, the once mighty Elam was a shadow of its former self, vulnerable to external threats. Over time, it faded from historical prominence, a casualty of Ashurbanipal's wrath. Arab tribes, particularly in the Levant, often posed challenges to Assyrian interests. They would raid Assyrian territories or disrupt trade, prompting the Assyrian army to intervene and replace problematic tribal leaders. Ashurbanipal's reign saw 2 significant campaigns against these Arab tribes, with the Kedarites being a primary target in the first campaign. Before the civil war with Shamash-Shum-Ukin, Ashurbanipal took action against the Kedarites. Early accounts suggest that Yuda, a Kedarite leader, rebelled against Ashurbanipal, leading to a conflict. The Assyrians, with the help of their Moabite allies, managed to defeat the rebels. While some leaders were captured, Yuda managed to escape. Later versions of this story suggest that Yuda's rebellion was linked to the revolt of Shamash-Shum-Ukin, hinting at a larger conspiracy against Ashurbanipal. As the civil war raged on, some Arab tribal leaders sided with Shamash-Shum-Ukin. With Ashurbanipal's attention diverted to Elam, these tribes took advantage, ceasing tribute payments and raiding Assyrian settlements. This prompted a major Assyrian campaign to restore order. The campaign was challenging, with the Assyrians navigating unfamiliar and hostile terrains. Despite the difficulties, Ashurbanipal's forces managed to capture key leaders, including Ueate, who was paraded in Nineveh and subjected to humiliating treatment. The spoils from these Arabian campaigns were vast, leading to inflation within the Assyrian Empire and famine in Arabia. However, despite their scale and intensity, these campaigns are sometimes seen as a strategic mistake. They consumed time and resources without establishing lasting Assyrian control over the regions. Ashurbanipal, often hailed as the last great king of the Neo-Assyrian Empire, saw the twilight years of his reign marked by a decline in the empire's dominance. The vast territories he once controlled began to show signs of unrest and rebellion. The once mighty Assyrian military machine seemed less invincible as the years went on. The drop in documentation post-649 BC might be indicative of significant internal political crises. The empire, built on military conquests, tribute, and centralized authority, began to show cracks in its facade. Ashurbanipal's decision to favor eunuchs over the traditional Assyrian elite for high-ranking positions might have been a strategic move to ensure loyalty, but it likely alienated the traditional nobility and military elite, leading to further instability. His inscriptions from this period paint a picture of a king deeply troubled by the state of his empire and his own health. The empire's peripheries, especially regions like Egypt, began to drift away from Assyrian control. Egypt, under Santikai, managed to unify and gradually extricate itself from Assyrian dominance. While Santikai had been educated in the Assyrian court and initially ruled as an Assyrian vassal, he slowly extended his influence across Egypt, eventually asserting full independence. However, even after gaining independence, Egypt remained an ally to Assyria, a testament to the diplomatic ties Ashurbanipal had fostered. The circumstances surrounding Ashurbanipal's death remain one of the great mysteries of ancient Mesopotamian history. The last concrete evidence of his reign comes from a contract dated to 631 BC, while some historians have proposed theories of a co-regency or even suggested that Ashurbanipal might have been the same person as the Babylonian ruler Kandalanu. Most evidence contradicts these theories. Ashur-etil-ilani, Ashurbanipal's successor, inherited an empire on the brink. The transition might not have been smooth, given the internal and external challenges the empire faced. Ashurbanipal's policies, especially his favoring of eunuchs and potential alienation of the traditional elite, could have left a legacy of political instability that Ashur-etil-ilani had to navigate. The final years of Ashurbanipal's reign marked the beginning of the end for the Neo-Assyrian Empire. The challenges he faced set the stage for the empire's eventual decline and fall. Ashurbanipal's reign, while marked by significant territorial expansion and military conquests, is also notable for the exceptional brutality depicted in his inscriptions and reliefs. This level of violence, especially when compared to other Assyrian kings, raises questions about the motivations and ideologies that underpin such actions. The Assyrian worldview was deeply rooted in the belief that their king was the earthly representative of the god Ashur. This ideology posited that the world outside of Assyria was chaotic and uncivilized, and it was the divine duty of the Assyrian king to bring order and civilization to these lands. This perspective justified their expansionist policies as a moral obligation rather than mere imperial ambition. Consequently, any resistance to Assyrian rule was not just a political rebellion but a challenge to the divine order. Such transgressions, in the eyes of the Assyrians, warranted severe punishment. However, while this ideology provides a backdrop, it doesn't fully explain the heightened brutality under Ashurbanipal. Previous kings, operating under the same ideological framework, did not always resort to the same levels of violence. For instance, Sargon II, an earlier king, was known for his acts of mercy and clemency. The majority of Assyrian kings reserved their harshest treatments for enemy combatants and elites, sparing civilians from the worst of their wrath. Ashurbanipal's reign stands out in this regard. His military campaigns reached further than those of his predecessors, and the accompanying brutality was unparalleled. Despite the grand image of a warrior king that he projected in his reliefs, it's believed that Ashurbanipal rarely, if ever, personally participated in these campaigns. This detachment might have contributed to his willingness to sanction such extreme measures. His deep religious convictions might also have played a role. Ashurbanipal was known for his devotion to the gods, as evidenced by his extensive efforts to rebuild and renovate major shrines throughout the empire. His interest in omens and divination further underscores his religious zeal. This fervor might have translated into a heightened desire to punish those he perceived as enemies of the divine order. The graphic depictions of violence in his reliefs, especially against women, are particularly disturbing. Scenes of Assyrian soldiers attacking pregnant women are unprecedented in Assyrian art and highlight the extreme nature of Ashurbanipal's reign. In conclusion, while the Assyrian royal ideology provided a framework that justified military expansion and the punishment of rebels, the extreme brutality of Ashurbanipal's reign suggests other factors at play. Whether driven by personal detachment, religious zealotry, or a combination of factors, Ashurbanipal's reign remains one of the most brutally efficient periods in the history of the Neo-Assyrian Empire. Thank you for watching this episode of History Uncovered. We delved deep into the reign of Ashurbanipal and the complexities of the Assyrian Empire, and we hope you gained a deeper understanding of this pivotal period in ancient history. If you found this video informative and engaging, please like and subscribe to our channel for more fascinating stories from the past. Your support helps us bring more of these tales to light. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications so that you never miss a new video. Before you go, the algorithm has picked out another video just for you. We think you'll find it intriguing. Check it out on the screen now.